Hi everyone and welcome back to National 5 Biology. Today we're going to be taking a look at some past paper questions because this is something quite a lot of you have been asking for. So past paper questions, if you're not aware, they are older exam papers. So you can access these online if you just search for them online or go onto the SQA website. Now the idea of these is this should be something you are focusing on in your revision once you're feeling comfortable enough with the course content. So you should ideally be going over your notes, having some form of consolidation, whether people are doing mind maps or Cornell notes or anything like that. Maybe going through some more basic questions, quizzes, these sort of things. And the end point of your revision should be applying that information to a past paper because this is the type of question you will be asked in the exam. And it's also going to show you what sort of questions come up, but also get you a bit more familiar with the language of exams so you can get a bit more comfortable with it. So today we're going to make a start on the 2023 paper and we're looking at paper 1, which is multiple choice. So multiple choice, if you're not aware, in National 5 there's going to be 25 marks. For each question you get an option of A, B, C or D, and you just tick the one or circle the one that you think is correct. So let's make a little start on this and see how you do. For this, I thought the easiest thing of you trying to go along with this is you could either view it on the screen as we are just now. I'll give you a brief pause where you can hit spacebar, pause the video and answer the questions, and I'll give you the answer. Or you could go across and follow the link below to go and find this paper, do it itself, and then you can come on and just go through all the answers and the explanation straight off. So let's make a start on question 1. So question 1, there's a diagram of a typical plant cell with 4 parts labelled. It said which of the labelled structures would also be found in a typical animal cell. So just to remind you, maybe pause just now, give this question a go, choose if it's A, B, C or D, and then I'll go and run through this. So for this one here, the correct answer is B. The reason for that is that J is the cell membrane and M is the nucleus. Now, K is the chloroplast and L is the vacuole. The chloroplast and vacuole are only found in plant cells, whereas J and M, cell membrane and nucleus, they will also be found in an animal cell. So that's the correct answer here. For question 2, we're moving on to more of your osmosis experiments, and you have a data table here showing the mass of potato at the start and then the final mass of potato after 1 hour in various concentrations. The question is asking you which solution has the highest sugar concentration. So the correct answer for this is A. The reason for that is it's had the most significant decrease in mass. So if you remember from osmosis, that's the movement of water from a higher water concentration to a lower water concentration. Because A has decreased the most, that means it must be in the highest solute concentration, and all that water is moving from inside the potato cell to outside. So because you have that movement and there's the greatest decrease in mass, it's the most plasmalized, it must be in the highest sugar concentration, so that is A. For B, you can see it has decreased as well, but just not as much, so it's not going to be as high as the solution A. For C, they're both the same, which means the sugar solution will be the same concentration as the cell, so there's no movement, there's no higher to lower going on. And actually for D, you can see it's become turgid. They've actually moved into the cell, and the potato cell has got turgid, it's gained mass, and it's got heavier. So A for that one there. For question 3, we have a DNA question, where you have a sequence of bases in a strand of DNA. So A, T, G, C, C, A, T, and T. Now for this one here, it says, which of the following shows the complementary base sequence for the strand of DNA? So the correct answer for this is C. The reason for that is we know that A is complementary to T and C is complementary to G. So if you're working your way from left to right, you should find you have A matching with T, T matching with A, and the rest of them are C, G, G, T, A, A. So C for this one here. Make sure you're comfortable with your complementary base pairs. For 4, you have a set of 4 statements, and it's asking which of them is true for proteins. So 1, they are made in the nucleus. 2, they are affected by temperature. 3, they can be found in the cell membrane. And 4, they all function as enzymes. So the correct answer for this is A, 2 and 3. They are affected by temperature and they can be found in the cell membrane. Both of those statements are correct for proteins. 1, they are made in the nucleus. That is incorrect. Proteins are made at the ribosome. Don't get mixed up between the synthesis of mRNA from DNA in the nucleus. It's the ribosome makes proteins. And 4 trips up a lot of people. It says they all function as enzymes. That is not correct. Some function as enzymes, but not every protein functions as an enzyme. So this is a good example of exam technique. Just make sure that you're properly reading the entire question, that you're not getting tripped up by any of the language. For question 5, we have a calculation question. It's a sample of 350 bacterial cells were modified to produce a human protein. Only 210 of these cells successfully produced the protein. So calculate the percentage success. The correct answer for this is A, 60%. The reason for this, if we have 210 cells that successfully produce the protein, and we divide that by the total number of cells, which is 350, gives us an answer of 0.6, and then we're going to multiply that answer by 100 to get a percentage of 60. Now, for question 6, we're now moving on to respiration, and we have fermentation in yeast cells. It asks, does it occur in the cytoplasm, mitochondria, plasmids, or ribosomes? So the correct answer for this is A, the cytoplasm. So be careful of this with fermentation. Both fermentation and glycolysis take place in the cytoplasm, just like most cellular reactions. It is only aerobic respiration that takes place in the mitochondria. So if you got this one incorrect, if you chose B, just make sure that just because it's not a part of respiration doesn't mean that it takes place in the mitochondria, and have a look at where those all take place. For C, we have another calculation question. This one says an earthworm with a mass of 7 grams uses up 3.5 centimeters cubed of oxygen in 25 minutes. Calculate the volume of oxygen used by this earthworm in 1 minute. So the correct answer for this is B, 0.14 centimeters cubed. The reason for this is they've told us that the earthworm uses up 3.5 centimeters cubed in 25 minutes. So I'm going to divide that 3.5 by 25 to find what would be used in 1 minute, which gives us an answer of 0.14 centimeters cubed. For 8, we're now moving on to Unit 2, multicellular organisms, and we're having a look at stem cells. So it says a role of stem cells in the body is to produce antibodies, use skin tissue to repair a cut, enzymes, or hormones. So the correct answer for this is B. Stem cells can be used to generate new skin tissue in order to repair a cut. We know that stem cells do not make antibodies, they do not make enzymes, and they also do not make hormones. So B is correct for this. For question 9, we're now on to the structure and function of the brain. So it says, which row in the table shows the functions controlled by each part of the brain? So 1, where each of the structures is correct. The correct answer for this is C. The cerebrum is responsible for conscious thought, the medulla is responsible for breathing and heart rate, and the cerebellum is responsible for coordination and balance. Make sure you don't get your cerebrum and cerebellum mixed up, that's quite a common mistake. We are now going to move on to question 10, so another controlled communication question on hormones. For this one, there's just a bunch of statements on hormones. You have to decide which one of them is correct. So even if you think one of them is correct, make sure you go through the other 3 to make sure you're positive they are false. So the correct answer for this is D. Hormones are chemical messengers that travel in the bloodstream. Both of those statements are correct. Just to double check though, for A, electrical messengers, that's not true. For B, hormones are chemical messengers, correct. That travel along neurons, that's not true. For C, electrical messengers, no. Whereas D, hormones are chemical and they travel in the bloodstream. Both are correct, so D for 10. For question 11, we have a bit of a data analysis question here, okay? So make sure you look through all the information and you don't just jump into the table. So for question 11, it says, a man is fertile if his semen contains a minimum of 20 million sperm per centimeters cubed and at least 75% of the sperm cells are active. The table below shows the results of semen analysis from 4 sperm samples. Identify the sample that was from an infertile man. Now, the correct answer for this is B. The reason for that is you can see that person B has 23 million centimeters cubed of 23 million centimeters cubed of sperm, which is above the threshold for being fertile, but he has 30% inactive sperm. If 30% of his sperm are inactive, that means that 70% of his sperm is active and 70% is below that threshold we need for fertility. So B would be an infertile man, and that's the correct answer. For question 12, we have a question on variation and inheritance. So in mice, the dominant form of the gene, large B, determines black coat colour, and the recessive form, small b, determines brown coat colour. So we've got our dominant and our recessive alleles laid out in front of us. Now it says if two heterozygous mice were crossed, the expected phenotypes of the offspring would be, and it gives us some options here. So the correct answer for this would be A, 3 black and 1 brown would be the phenotypes of the offspring. So hopefully you made a little Punnett square here. The clue in this question is it says the two parent mice are heterozygous. So if they're heterozygous, they're going to have the dominant black colour coat allele and also the recessive small b brown coat colour as well. So if we have a big B and a small b crossed with a big B and a small b, we're going to end up with one homozygous dominant, big B, black mouse. We're going to have two heterozygous big B, small b black mice, and we're only going to have one homozygous recessive brown mouse. So 3 black to 1 brown. Now for question 13, I'm going to struggle to fit all of this in here. You might get a bit of this. The diagram shows a cross-section of a leaf. So looking at transport in plants, you're looking at your leaf structure, and you have to match the correct letters to the correct part of the leaf. So the correct answer for this is D. So we can see from the top up here, W is the upper epidermis, X is the palisade mesophyll. Remember, palisade, sort of old word for fence, so it's a sort of slatted structure going across. Below that we have Y, which is the spongy mesophyll with the big air gaps in between. And finally in the bottom we have Z, which is the guard cells. And the guard cells are on each side of the stomata, controlling the opening and closing. So D for question 13. So we're over halfway now, so please bear with me, and hopefully you're doing well so far. Make sure as well that you're keeping note of what you've got incorrect, because it's really important to see what you need to focus your revision on. So for question 14, we have an experimental design question that focuses on validity. So an investigation was carried out to compare transpiration in two different species of plant, G and H. The diagram shows a setup to measure transpiration in species G. So in species G, we have in this diagram here, we've got the plant coming out the plant pot, we have the sealed polythene bag around the plant pot, and we have a balance underneath it. It says which diagram shows the setup for species H that would allow a valid comparison in the rate of transpiration of the two species. So hopefully you can try and squeeze them all onto the same page. Let's see, this is the first experiment. What would be the correct valid comparison for species H? So the correct answer for this is D, this one down here. Now, the reason for that is for this to be a valid experiment, the only variable in this case that should be different is the plant species, so species G and species H. The rest of the experimental setup should be exactly the same. So if we're looking at both of these, we can see, for example, for experiment A, we have a similar size of plant from species H, we have the balance, we have the plant pot, but the bag is over both the plant and the pot, so that's not valid, it's not the same, that will give us incorrect results. For B, we have the bag over the plant pot, but we have a significantly smaller species H. For C, we just don't have a bag at all, and for D, we have a similar size of plant from species H, and the rest of the setup is the same. So if it's the same setup, it's a different species, which is the variable we are changing, that would be valid, so D for question 14. For question 15, it says, which row in the table describes some features of veins? So it gives you the direction of the blood flow in relation to the heart, blood pressure, and the width of the central channel of the vein. So again, go through and see which one you think is correct. So first of all, the correct answer for this is B. So in terms of direction of blood flow, veins are going to go towards the heart. They're also going to have a lower blood pressure than the arteries, for example. and the width of their central channel is wide. Now, a lot of these other ones talk about arteries, for example, going away from the heart or having a high blood pressure or a narrow central channel. So be careful with these ones with your arteries and veins. B for question 15. For question 16, the diagram shows a villus, and it's to identify the nutrients from food that are absorbed in the lacteal. And the lacteal, remember, is this middle part here on the inside. So try and remember what's absorbed there. The correct answer for this is C. The lacteal absorbs glycerol and fatty acids. So this is again just a bit of a recall question. This is one that you need to just remember what is absorbed by the lacteal and what is absorbed by the blood capillaries. For question 17, we have another experimental question here. It says 3 students carried out an investigation into the effect of exercise on heart rate. Each student measured their heart rate after completing the same exercises. After each student's heart rate returned to its resting rate, they repeated the process. Which of the following would increase the reliability of the results? So we've had a validity question already, and we now have a reliability one as well. So for this question here, you have 4 options. The correct answer for this is D, increase the number of students exercising. So the easy way to remember this is anytime we talk about reliability, we're wanting a large sample size. We're wanting to repeat this experiment several times with a large number of repeats. We can take an average. If you just do an experiment with 2 people and take a reading and decide that's the correct answer, that is not a reliable investigation. If you do this with 200 people, then that's more reliable. So increasing the time spent exercising won't really have an impact. Changing the exercise location or the type of exercise is not going to have an impact on reliability. But for D, increase the number of students exercising. And for 18, we're on now to Unit 3. So we're looking at ecosystem and the definition of a niche. The correct answer for 18 is C. The niche is the role an organism plays within its community. So again, these are all statements from Unit 3. You just need to make sure you're comfortable with all your definitions. There are quite a lot, particularly in the first key area of Unit 3, so go through them if you're not too sure. For question 19, which statement describes an abiotic factor? So the correct answer for this is B, a period of low temperatures. The reason for that is A, the spread of a disease is biotic, C, the increase in predation is also biotic, and D, competition is biotic also. People tend to forget that disease is a biotic factor, so sometimes they get that mixed up as being abiotic, but the only abiotic or non-living factor in this set of statements is temperature. For question 20, we have a photosynthesis experiment question. So an experiment was set up to investigate the effect of changing carbon dioxide concentration on the rate of photosynthesis, and the results are shown in the graph. So what's being measured is the volume of oxygen being produced, and what's being changed is carbon dioxide concentration percentage. So you can see as this increases, we're initially getting an increase in the volume of oxygen being produced, and then it levels off despite the fact that carbon dioxide concentration is still increasing. So it says which of the following factors could be limiting the rate of photosynthesis at point X, which is at this leveled off point. So the correct answer for this is B, light intensity and temperature. The reason for that is you can see carbon dioxide is still increasing, but there is no further increase in the volume of oxygen. Therefore, the carbon dioxide concentration cannot possibly be limiting this experiment any further. The 2 other limiting factors of photosynthesis are light intensity and temperature, and they've not been mentioned in this experiment, so it could be either of those that are holding this back. At this point down here, we could say that carbon dioxide was the limiting factor, because as we increase the carbon dioxide concentration, we can see the volume of oxygen, and therefore the rate of photosynthesis is increasing. But at this point, it's not carbon dioxide, it's the other 2, light intensity and temperature. On to the final 5 questions now, and still on Unit 3. For 21, we have a pyramid of numbers found within an ecosystem. This one here says identify the number of consumers in this pyramid. The correct answer for this is C, 4,098. The reason for that is there's a bit of a trick. You should remember that the bottom level of a pyramid of numbers is always the producers, so that's the number of producers in this ecosystem. But then we have primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers on top. So in terms of the total number of consumers, you're adding these three numbers here, which are going to give you 4,098. For question 22, the table shows the concentration of different metal ions in the liver of a fish in water. For this one here, it gives you a bit of an equation to work with. So it tells you the bioaccumulation factor, or BAF, can be calculated using the formula concentration of metal ion in the liver divided by the concentration of metal ion in the water. And it's asking the metal with the highest bioaccumulation factor is, and you have to choose one of these. So to be safest, go through all of these, use your calculator, go and divide the concentration of metal ion in the liver by the metal in the water. The correct answer for this is D, zinc. Zinc has a bioaccumulation factor of 797. If you went through the rest of these, you should have cadmium, which is 2.62 divided by 0.004, gives you a bioaccumulation factor of 655. Copper will give you 332. Iron will provide 650. And as I said, zinc, 55.79 divided by 0.07 gives 797, the highest bioaccumulation factor. For question 23, we're being told about a weather event in the Galapagos Islands. During this event, the iguanas in the islands decrease in body length due to their lack of food. Now, scientists calculated decrease in body length of the iguanas and recorded their survival, and we see the results here. So the average survival of iguanas in years is up the side, going from 0 to 3, and across the bottom we have the decrease in body length. Now for this one, you have the data, you have 4 statements, and you have to decide which of the statements is true. Again, if you, for example, think that A is correct, make sure you go through B, C, and D and ensure they are incorrect. So the correct answer for this is C. The iguanas that had the greatest decrease in body length survived for the longest time. And you can see this here. So the ones that decreased the most, from 21 to 60 millimeters, they had the greatest increase in survival. They were up around 3 years. Again, double check everything else is incorrect. So the iguanas that had the least decrease in body length survived for the longest time. That's not true. They survived for roughly 1 year as opposed to roughly 3 years. The decrease in body length made no difference. That's not true. You can see there's a correlation going on here. As the decrease increases, then the average survival time also increases. And D, the iguanas that had the greatest decrease in body length survived for the shortest time. Again, that's incorrect. They survived for the longest. And the final 2 questions here. So question 24, which of the following is the only source of new alleles in a population? The correct answer for this is A, mutation. Again, this is just a statement you need to remember. Mutations are the only source of new alleles in a population. Don't be distracted by the idea of speciation that needs to start with isolation and requires natural selection to take place. Without mutations, there are no new alleles. And finally, for question 25, nematode worms can be used by farmers to decrease the number of insects that damage their crops. This describes the use of what? And the correct answer for this is B, biological control. Remember, that's using the natural predator, using a living organism to control pest numbers rather than using pesticides. It's certainly not GM crops, it's not pesticides, and it's not a fertilizer. So using an insect or an animal that will eat something else is biological control. So, well done. Hopefully you went through this and maybe mark what you got out of 25. Again, the main thing here is getting used to the language used in the SQA. Make sure you don't get confused by some of the wording. Make sure you've read all the information several times and you've taken the right idea of the question. And again, a really important thing for your own revision is go through this, maybe focus on, for example, if you always got the questions on respiration wrong, or if you always got any of the experimental questions wrong, that's what you need to focus your revision on. Don't just keep looking at things like cell biology if you're getting all those questions correct, and ensuring you just revise over them over and over again because you're doing well. Focus on what you need to look at, and then they would go back and try a different past paper later on. So that's all. Thanks so much for getting in touch. We're looking at getting some more past papers put up, and you could really help this channel as well if you find it useful by subscribing, and we'll get some more past paper questions sent out, and make sure you look over the course content as well. So that's all for just now. Bye for now, and see you soon.